Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today, you are joining a presentation brought to you by Michigan Rehabilitation Services and the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons. Welcome to Crucial Conversations and Retaining Talent. And thank you again for joining us as we celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month. This presentation is brought to you by the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, Michigan Rehabilitation Services, as well as the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons. Before we dive into the content of today's training, I'd like to review a few housekeeping pointers. One, we ask that you please be patient with us, especially as it relates to technology. You know, we all are learning the game, and so to speak, but sometimes we have those hiccups that we don't plan for. But we appreciate being in good hands with our tech support, Tyler Gross, and we know we will go off without a hitch. We also ask you to please turn off your video and keep your microphones on mute during the presentation. This will hopefully help with providing clear sound to all participants. My colleagues, Charlene Organ and Dan Mitchell, will be monitoring the chat box today. So be sure to type in any of the questions you may have during the training or any points you'd like us to revisit. We plan to have time at the end of the presentation to address questions, and those that cannot be fully addressed during the presentation, we will be sure to answer and send out. Today, we'll be going over the following topics. We're going to talk a little bit about understanding what vocational rehabilitation is. We'll talk about defining a disability, how to have some of those crucial conversations, and when it's most effective. We're going to talk about some retention and resources to help support that. And then, as I mentioned before, we're going to have time for questions and any comments that you may have. So I'd like to introduce myself. I am Lisa Stanley, and I am a business relations consultant with Michigan Rehabilitation Services, part of the Business Network Division. As I mentioned earlier, October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Over 100 years of vocational rehabilitation has been provided nationwide. Being mindful of the Americans with Disabilities Act, we work on upskilling and connecting individuals to competitive, integrated employment opportunities. This year's theme is America's Recovery, powered by inclusion. NDIEM is a Department of Labor Office of Disability Employment Policy initiative that is held each October to commemorate the many and varied contributions of persons with disabilities to America's workplaces and its economy. Over 100 years of vocational services have been provided to individuals with disabilities nationwide, and that includes providing education, skill enhancements, all while connecting individuals to competitive, integrated employment opportunities. If you would like more detailed information on vocational rehabilitation programs, please feel free to reach out to us. In vocational rehab, we serve two primary customers. We call this the dual customer service approach. So we serve individuals with a disability, and we do that in every county across the state of Michigan. Last year, 48,098 vocational counseling services, job placement, and retention services were provided to the individuals in the state of Michigan. As we looked at our business customers, we had almost 6,000 business services that were provided to help businesses match and retain qualified workers, as well as provide information, trainings, and consultations on how to make their workforce more inclusive. Before we talk a little bit more about the services that MRS can provide, we want to first share with you what is a disability. Many of you might think you know, and you probably do. But in our world at Michigan Rehabilitation Services, it's important to remember the context of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Disability is a legal term rather than a medical one. The ADA makes it unlawful to discriminate against a person based on their disability, in addition to discriminating against a person's association with a person who may have a disability. For example, it's illegal to not hire someone because you know they have a family member with a disability. It's important to remember that in the context of the ADA, there are repercussions if people feel like they've been discriminated against. So when we talk about some of the things that we've went through recently with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic and its many after effects and waves and variants that we continue to face, many conversations are being held regarding people with specific disabilities. They may include conversations about masks or vaccination mandates. Some of these conversations can become very uncomfortable and happen really fast, especially as we discuss returning to work. And exactly what does that look like? In so many different areas, things can vary so much, right? And what is the underlying factor of why some people really respond the way they do? It's fear. So we have fear of the unknown. We have fear of, people being sick. How can I care for my family? How will I pay my bills and so forth if I get exposed to a variant or I get vaccinated and have a bad experience? So we know many of you in this audience have already been having these conversations. You probably have them on a daily basis, and some have probably went very well. Perhaps there have been some that maybe didn't go as well as you liked. So I ask you, how are you reaching out to connect with your employees? Has there been a best practice that you've been able to use? Is there one that you're willing to share? Maybe put it in the chat box there to help your colleagues across the state. I would like you to join us in a video clip where our colleague, Monica Robbins, who is also a business relations consultant, is having a similar conversation with one of her community partners, Lucia Rose, accommodations coordinator for Salesforce.
Give me 1 second, I apologize. I'm gonna have to bring down the screen share and bring it back up.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. See, I warned you, we get little hiccups every once in a while, but hey, we're in good hands with Tyler for sure. So in this upcoming little video clip, Monica and Lucia are going to talk about why it's so recommended to have a reasonable accommodation process in place. Please follow along and use any of the tips, take some notes. Any ideas? We'll be happy to talk about them.
Hello, Lucia.
Hey.
Welcome to this conversation this morning in regards to crucial conversations and retention. So for audience purposes, Lucia Rios is a Workforce Navigator Program Associate for people with disabilities in the Office of Accessibility at Salesforce. Lucia has served in a variety of support facilitator capacities for persons with disabilities. Lucia, would you be willing to share with us a little bit about your background and professional involvement?
Yeah, so for 15 years, I actually worked for a nonprofit called Disability Network Lakeshore, and it's a center for independent living. And so in that organization, I worked a lot with business owners and also employers as well, and employees in a variety of capacities. So I did a lot of technical access, like questions regarding physical access. And then I also worked a lot with youth with disabilities and adults with disabilities regarding the workspace. So helping students with, looking at what types of jobs they want, what types of careers they want, helping them with resume writing, interviewing, learning about what an accommodation is, what their disabilities are, and then also working with adults too on that as well, as far as some of them adults going back into the workforce after having been out, but also understanding what accommodations you need, but also what types of roles, skills that you have that would fit into roles within the workforce. So most recently, I worked at an organization called The Source, which is an employer-based nonprofit. So employers pay into this this resource navigation. So I work specifically with a local company, and helping their employees navigate resources internally and also externally as well. I just started a position at Salesforce in the Office of Accessibility in October. So I am beginning of October. So yeah, so that's kind of all that. I also use a wheelchair and crutches. So I understand a lot of disability, obviously. I was born with spina bifida, and so yeah, I've been in the workforce ever since I was 19. So and then all that. So yeah.
Thanks. Thank you so much. I appreciate the share, and I also appreciate your professional background and experience, knowledge that you bring to the table, which is perfect for the purposes, again, of this presentation. So I'm hoping you can provide some additional insight regarding, some of the crucial conversations in the workplace related to disability inclusion and awareness, and how to enhance those engagements and maintain that trust.
So, I know one of the things that I was always, in my roles, when I connect with individuals with disabilities, is to understand what their disabilities are, but also what accommodations they may or may not need, and being that advocate for them. So that's something that, I think is important as a person with a disability to understand, but also helping with the employer as well. So one of the things in my past role was, when I was, because you guys can make me sound good, right? Okay, so
You're fine.
So in my past role, working with the Source, it was geared toward working with all employees, but I tended to get a lot of employees who would disclose about their disabilities, or their supervisor would tell them, well, if you need an accommodation, here's someone that you can talk to. And so I really just kind of had I would have a good conversation with them as far as like what their needs are, what's working on the job, what's not working on the job. Even going as far as going on the job accommodation network and looking with them about the different types of accommodations that there are. A lot of times people think an accommodation is this huge thing where it doesn't always have to be. So also just connecting with that employee to be confident with what they need as well, because I think that's important, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to have to ask for that.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you helped facilitate communication and education, both to the business and to the employee, essentially, to help make that connection and get both entities moving in a forward direction towards resolution and remedy. And
confidentiality is always important as well. So whether it was the individual, the employee coming to me, I would ask permission. Okay, well, and I would also say, like, your employer wants you to succeed here. I think that's it. Employers want employees to succeed, and so they want to retain those employees. And so part of that is, if there is something that they could do to help better the experience, then I think that they would want that. And so I would really frame it in a positive way. And also say, it's something that can, they might not know that you need it, and maybe this can help you to, to work within the company too. So, but I would ask for permission if they wanted me to talk to their, either HR or their work team leader, or schedule a meeting with all of us. So I had that happen too, where it was like myself and then an employee and the employer and their boss. And so talking about some of that stuff and coming in with examples of what might be able to help this individual.
Yeah, that seems to be really helpful, which kind of segues into my next question. What are some of the intentional or proactive approaches utilized to remind people about internal and external resources and how to leverage those as they're, trying to, I guess, walk that fine line with what do they disclose or reach out to help for from the employer side? Because I know a lot of people kind of are hesitant to do that and fear
Mhm.
that it may jeopardize their employment.
Yep. And I think that is, for me, my disability is very visible. So, that's a little, I think sometimes it's easier for an employer to see that they might need something or maybe not, but also for me, it's very tangible. Where I think with people with some of the invisible disabilities, it's harder to disclose because they don't, because there's still that stigma about disability as well. And so I think some people don't want others to think that they can't do the job or they don't want to do the job. And so I think that sometimes, makes it difficult for people to want to disclose. And so, or disclosure happens when it comes down to, well, they're about to lose a job. And so that's something that you don't want to happen. It's not a workforce. It's not because you don't want to do the job. It's because you need something maybe to help you, enable you to perform that job. So I think that, as far as that, I always, employers, I think it's the way that you message it too. So I think, as far as, right now, like it's National Disability Employment Awareness Month, which I'm sure all of you know about. And so if not, learn more about it. And I think that's why this program is happening. But I think I'm seeing a lot more employers that are really connecting to that month. You have all the other months out of the year that people participate in, but Disability Employment Awareness Month is one that's not always, employers don't always know about. But I think, if you're in a company or if you're in a business where they actually even just, letting people know that it's that or having posters up or even like talking about it, I think then that opens up the conversation more. And so an individual's like, well, they're actually like, they're doing this in a positive way, so I'm seeing that happen a lot with the company I currently work for, where it's kind of a the company's celebrating it in that way. So I think putting it in a positive way, having even in any communication, if you need an accommodation, please reach out to so and so, or if you those are things that make it you feel like it's safe to do, like to open up. I think those types of messages can help, I think, make people a little bit more comfortable asking for it. Some individuals, they may not have needed accommodation in the past jobs, but current job, maybe a different job that they apply for, they do need an accommodation. So I need to think like, and I know people ask that question during the interview, can you do this job with or without a reasonable accommodation? And so I know that you don't have to necessarily say, well, this is what accommodation I need at that point. But to know that you can answer that question, I tell my people, making sure you can answer that question like truthfully, but also thinking about what accommodation you may need. So, I think like also bringing it up again, I think, one of the things, and I don't know, that word accommodation, it's so like, I don't know, it's just, it's supposed to be positive, but it's not always seen as positive. And there is actually a group, it's called Inclusively. And I think I've talked to you about this before, Monica, where they actually use accommodations, they call them enablers. And so they spin it in a positive way. And so I had never seen that before until like recently, but inclusively.com. I would encourage everyone to check it out just to see how bigger companies are spinning, accommodations and disabilities. So
Thank you. Yeah, I think, being empowered to share what your abilities are and how you navigate the world around you and helping others who may not know, just, because it's not within their scope of expertise or it's not their part of their experience, it can really be powerful. And I think that's where us as community partners, as VR, provide a lot of support in regards to that, working with individuals, providing OT services to help demonstrate to employers, like we're here to provide support, help you walk this path, both business and the individual customer.
Yeah, and I think utilizing those supports, I think, is very important. I think because, with VR services, and the whole goal is to keep people employed, but also to grow within. You want people with disabilities want jobs. People with disabilities have a lot of talents and will stay at jobs. And so I think that it's definitely, an untapped market. I think untapped potential or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
when we think about, effective, reasonable accommodations and, some of the stigma or fear associated with it, and, employees not always leveraging that in the workplace, what do you think is a setup that helps to streamline that or make the process easier for individuals?
I think having a point person, and I think most places do have someone that handles accommodations or those types of things. But I think like being letting people know where to go or where it's at, who to call. I think that's important. So even having, and not just letting one person know, but like the whole team know, as far as the people in leadership or the people who are like the team, the managers, letting them know. So that way when they're working with an individual, if someone comes to them and asks about it, or if they have, would give someone the information to have that available, the worst thing that can happen is this, they could say, yeah, you have someone that does that, but we don't know who that is. And so like, and it's hard, especially if someone's going to be, it's hard to disclose, I think, especially because you're vulnerable. And so I think that, I think part of it's you're vulnerable with yourself too, saying that like, I do need some assistance, but then vulnerable with those people around you. And so I think if you are given the runaround, like call this person or maybe this person, or you get dead ends and you're gonna be tired. You're gonna be like, maybe this isn't worth it. Or maybe my employee really doesn't get it. So I think letting multiple people know where they can access that information, so that way, or even a website or something within, that, or calling, call benefits right away, and having them know where to place the person. So I think that can be one of the things that people would struggle with, I think, is if they're given the runaround.
Thank you. Yeah, I know some of the businesses that I've worked with, they actually put it on their website to make it, kind of like a universal design, however it speaks to people, however they access information. So yeah, appreciate that share. Definitely you've been a big part of that process in our local region here. So how do these efforts impact retention efforts for a business?
So I think that, like I said, many people with disabilities want to work, they can work. And I think that you also want to see people in the workplace like you too, just like any, people with disabilities or people of color, people, we want to we want inclusion. And so I think that, I think helping set up your employees for success, is important for them to stay too. But I think that, if they ask for, not feeling like you're, feeling like you belong in the company. And I think that's part of it. And I think belonging is, you celebrate in the successes, but also, if an employee is struggling, that you are, they have someone to go to as well. Whether that is, I know mental health is a big thing right now. I know, and its companies are doing a lot as far as to provide free mental health to their employees. And so I think that, think of it. I think that's, it's a good thing. And that's a way to keep people too. So I think, I just think, and I think that's the belonging though. So if you know that your employer is concerned about your mental health, then you're like, wow, they really, they really want me here. So I think that could be the same with other people with disabilities. If you're, you are intentional too about hiring people with disabilities, or about including people in their marketing. With different types of disabilities. We're also big into like making sure it's diverse with like color, but what about the disability experience too, or I think that the belonging piece, and I think also being open to training opportunities for individuals with disabilities as well. I think that's a way that people can grow within the company, but keep your employees too. And understanding too, I think in one instance, can I give an example?
Yeah.
Okay, so in one instance, I'd worked with an employee who was trying to grow within the company. And this individual had was trying to get into a type of program within the company, and had interviewed, but didn't go the second, third round. So I was very just upset about that. So had come to see me and we talked about it. And, it was at that interview that just the person couldn't get past. And so the person was open to me talking to the people who had interviewed this individual. And the feedback that they gave me was like, this person, can do it, but the interview is just, it was hard for this person to explain things. So we talked about it and I talked to the person and they were open to other ways to interview this individual. So that way they could have a fair shot as well at trying to get within the program. And so, and that would even, so that was a good conversation to have because, this person didn't realize that the interview process was what was keeping, the person from moving forward. And so that was good to talk to the individuals who were doing interviewing and talking to the employee to see how can we come together? What's going to be easier for you? But not easier, but what's going to work for you to still show that you have the skills to do this. So.
Well, what a way to reframe that and salvage that opportunity. I mean, because we do work with a lot of people that, unfortunately, they don't have the ability to articulate on the spot. They get nervous, anxious, but they, from a hands-on perspective, are able to demonstrate they have the capacity to do the essential functions of the job. So for an employer to be willing to look at alternative options to interview someone is really it's progressive and it's needed.
It is. Yeah. And it was really exciting to see because this individual had worked for the company for many years. So it wasn't like they were like a newbie. I mean, this person understood everything and it was just that the way that they were the more hands-on, more of that versus the articulation. But, then, you look at it. So if the employer was to say, no, that's, well, tough luck, they might have lost a good employee that had been faithful. And so now, but just what a way that person could grow within, but just, understanding like what was going on, but also it was good for the employee to understand too that, you don't just want to give up either, but also what's the way that we can work together for it. So I thought, so that was, I think, a good moment for on both ends as well. Because a person didn't realize that they could maybe have an alternative option. So.
No, and that's why I think it's so helpful sometimes for us to leverage our external partners to become part of a business's internal process from that perspective of being kind of a neutral, objective third party to help facilitate that communication and potentially create opportunities that they may not have considered before. So, with that retention piece, I mean, you think about the losses versus the gains by keeping someone who is a loyal employee who had working knowledge of inner culture. I mean, that's a win too. Win for the business, win for the individual. So I think for the purposes of this conversation, we clearly could go on and on, but I'm going to thank you very much for your responses today. We're going to end on that note. So it just makes really good business sense for us to think outside the box, again, leverage those internal, external resources to help us improve processes related to disability inclusion and retention efforts. And honestly, these approaches could benefit all employees, those that you've mentioned, Lucia. So not just for our fellow community members who have disabilities. So we appreciate your insight and expertise. And if anyone would like to connect with Miss Lucia Rios, you can connect with her via LinkedIn. Thank you so much, Lucia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Give me 1 second, Lisa. I'm dealing with a bug on my side.
Sure. I just wanted to thank everyone for kind of bearing with us with our little freeze frame here, and thanking Monica and Lucia for sharing some very valuable information and inside tips and what it's really like out there as we're trying to maneuver and include and attract new types of talent. Are there things maybe that you guys are doing that you could share in the chat with us? Things that might be more helpful? So as we kind of think about things a little bit differently, there's a lot of resistance and fears right now, going back to the workplace with things that individuals are struggling with, just all about with this pandemic and the different variants coming out. That's an uncomfortable situation for, I think, all of us to be in. But I think there's some hope. And just remain encouraged and thinking positively about what 2022 is going to bring to us. I know I'm super excited trying to focus on the new and improved things that will be coming out into the future. Well, kind of excited because truthfully, I was watching the news this morning and there is, what was it? Tesla got one of the car rental places ordered like 100 of them or whatever. So electric cars are coming. And we're going to get back on track here. So when we look at dancing with resistance and staying in equipoise, right? The COVID-19 pandemic left us all learning like some new dance steps, if you may, as we face new and unique situations. One thing we want to do is encourage you to remain open, think creatively, think outside the box when it comes to problem solving or creating solutions for your workforce. Talk about ideas, talk through them. Possible accommodations can be explored just through basic conversations. Be creative, right? Many times, as HR representatives, you don't have the luxury to address things later or, to set it aside and get back to it another time. We understand that life is busy, work is busy. It's okay. We encourage you to, not be afraid of trying new solutions or, causing some hesitation. That's all normal. Just take a chance and work with your individuals and see it through. So if we look at a few different things, let's take a few minutes to share the interactions with another one of our colleagues, Charlene Organ, as she talks with one of our business connections about how an inclusive environment with a strong workforce retention program can help in making these conversations much easier. Enjoy the next video clip.
Well, thank you so much for meeting with us today, Laura. I appreciate you coming. So this is Laura from Lumberman's. We're just going to ask you some questions about how you retain your employees. So one of the topics that we talked about was being ghosted. Have you heard of being ghosted? Has that happened to you?
Yes. I don't think that any employer is somehow exempt from being ghosted, but obviously as you're going through the process, you are receiving applications from candidates and you reach out to them because they've expressed interest, and sometimes they respond and sometimes they don't, or sometimes they'll respond to get that interview scheduled, but then the interview comes and they don't. So we have experienced more ghosting throughout the COVID pandemic timeframe than previously. I would say that it seems to be getting better over the last couple months than it was previously, but I would say that probably 25% still, which is high, of our candidates may fall off somewhere in the process.
So does anybody get to, yes, I'll be there, and then they don't show?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any characteristic or rhyme or reason or a feeling or anything that you can give us? Or it's just not really?
Sometimes some candidates are more difficult to get a hold of.
Okay.
They may just dodge you more frequently, or maybe they don't seem as excited when you get to the job offer stage.
Okay.
They're listening, but you can tell the difference between a candidate. We do job offers over the phone, and you can tell the candidate who's super excited that you called them and you offered them a position, and some people that are maybe a little bit more reserved, and maybe they're doing the happy dance on the other side of the phone and you just don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
But sometimes that can be something that could lead you to believe that, but We have had instances where we get somebody all the way through and then offer them the position and set a start date, and then they stop communicating with us. So, and truthfully, I would rather that than have them start and get a few days in or a few weeks in and do it.
Yeah,
So
true.
even though it is frustrating and you have to start over in the process, the further they get, the more work it is to replace them. So.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. So where do you pull most of your talent from? Where are you finding it?
So we post positions obviously on our website, but then we also feed them through Indeed, Career Builder, ZipRecruiter, all of those job posting forums. And then we utilize the partnership of staffing agencies just to extend our reach, because our business is wholesale. So we don't have as much maybe reach in the community because people don't buy from Lumbermen, so they may not know who we are. But we also still get a pretty decent number of referrals from existing employee owners, and that's probably our most preferred method of reaching candidates, because if you know Lumbermen's and you work here, you know what the expectation is, you know what it's like to work here, you know what you like and what you don't like, and you can pass that on. You're also not going to refer someone who you don't think is going to do a good job, because it reflects on you as well.
That's true.
So, you know, some companies have done sign-on bonuses, which I'm personally against. I think it sends a really poor message. Oh, you just started today. Here's some money. And all the people that have worked here for the last, I don't know, even just through COVID, get nothing. So we've put more of a focus on referral bonuses. So if you were to refer someone in, we would give you a gift when they start, and then you get a Visa gift card once they've been here for 6 months, trying to promote the fact that it helps our HR team a ton if someone helps us to bring candidates that are like-minded and hardworking into the organization.
That's a really cool idea, just to bring, so it really encourages the growth of the talent, but then everybody, you still know each other and what to expect and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, we partnered with our marketing team just starting last week. We have 2 different referral competitions going on. One is to repost on social media all of our job posts, and they hashtag I love Lumbermen's. And then every time they post, they get credit for it, and the people who get the most will get like a Lumbermen's prize pack at the end of November. And then we also have a larger scale competition where each business division is pitted against one another, and whoever gets the most referrals, our HR and marketing teams will combine together and make them breakfast.
Wow.
So, so because it helps us a ton, we figure why not. So we were partnering with the marketing team to build everything out, and they said, well, we'll help cook. So they'll get about 10 of us together to cook for whichever division brings in the most referrals between now and the end of the year. So,
oh my goodness, that is such a good idea. That's not like the only swag thing that you do too, right? Like when somebody starts, how does that work? Like on their day, do they get something?
Yep, so there are kind of 2 pieces to the intentionality that we put through bringing someone on board. So our talent acquisition specialist will communicate back and forth with that candidate and send multiple emails just letting them know what to expect. And then on their first day, when they come in, they're welcomed by another employee owner with a bag that says welcome to the team on it, and it just has some essentials. It has safety glasses and a notepad and a pen, and it has a welcome note from our president. It also has candy in it, because who doesn't love candy? And it's just a very intentional way to say, hey, we want you here. And we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback on that. And then typically within their first week or 2, we'll schedule them into orientation with some other new folks, so they realize they're not the only new person. And they receive another gift at that point that is, it's got their orientation paperwork in it as well, which isn't as exciting, but it's got a chapstick and some hand sanitizer, because these have become essentials, but then it also has a double wall stainless mug that says Lumbermen's on it, and that's something you only get at orientation. So it's become kind of a prized possession of the folks who have gotten it over the years. And then, of course, all their stuff has to be carried somehow, so it all comes in a nice Lumbermen's drawstring backpack that they can then use to, bring their lunch or their steel toes or whatever they need to work. And then they also, when we push it out a little ways, once they've been here for a year, We actually just changed it. They used to get credit to our company web store, but now we got these nice warm fuzzy blankets, and so we mail them home a nice blanket once they've been here for a year with a little note that says we appreciate their dedication and whatnot. So.
Yeah, but bringing that family type atmosphere really probably helps retain your people, right? Like,
Absolutely.
Is all of this to help retain your employees? Do you have like charts or graphs? I'm sure you do, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we don't have any of those right now.
No, I don't. Absolutely, I think it helps drive retention.
Mhm.
At Lumberman's, when I do orientation, I tell people, I worked at other organizations before I came here, and I think each work experience prepares you for the next one. You learn the things you like, you learn the things you're good at, you learn the things that don't really work for you, and you learn more about what direction you want to go. And so what I tell people is so many companies, they put profit first because they need to keep the doors open. And so when you put profit first, people are secondary and they might feel that way. And one of the things that I noticed immediately about Lumberman's is that Lumberman's puts people first. We are employee owned, relationship powered, and what we do is driven by the fact that we have a team that is committed and dedicated and wants to help the company succeed. And so when you take care of people, the people take care of the rest. And so we talk so much about that in the interview process and in orientation. That is every day perfect? It's not, but we're in it together. And whether it's so busy we can't see straight, which is the way it's been since everything opened back up after the initial COVID shutdown, or we're in tough times where, for those first, 6 or 7 weeks of COVID, many of our customers were closed. We didn't have as many hours, but our team banded together and they know we are work family. So whether, people have those depending on them at home or not, when they come to work, this is their work family and we're all in this together. It's not about how do I make you look bad so I can be amazing. It's how do we together make Lumberman's succeed? Because when the company succeeds, the team succeeds with it through our retirement program. Lumberman's is doing well. Everyone receives a more generous retirement contribution each year. And so that is a huge piece of it as well. Is Lumberman seeks to give back to the people that drive the company's success.
So based on that aspect of it, it's really people focused. And how do you keep a gauge on your staff? How do you keep a gauge on what they need? Although I do know that you've reached out to me several times and you're like, hey, I have this employee that's, needs this, but you work with a variety of different organizations, right, to try to help this family, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So from the obvious benefits needs, medical insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, AFLAC, all that good stuff, we offer a comprehensive benefits plan that can support our team and the people that depend on them. Probably 4 years ago, we also started a partnership with The Source, which is a local nonprofit that supports the employees of member organizations. So basically, Lumberman's pays an annual membership fee so that all of our employee owners and the people who live in their homes can utilize the benefits of The Source as a free and confidential resource. So for example, during COVID, some people faced challenges monetarily with housing and transportation and things like that. And The Source knows what funding is available. So for example, currently there's the SARA program that can help individuals who are renting and who have gotten behind on rent. We had a situation where an employee owner was afraid they were going to get evicted because they were behind on rent, and we were able to partner them with The Source, get the application process moving, and that individual not only got their back rent paid, but 3 months in advance through the partnership of The Source being able to help fill out that application, and avoided what they would have thought they needed to do, which was an emergency 401k loan, which of course we don't want anyone to have to face that.
No. And so during COVID, we've talked about that several times, and we know that it's stressful out there to bring in talent. But retaining talent, have you had lots of people leave? Are you experiencing all of that? Or sounds like you've kept everybody going through it. You guys really...
We have had some turnover.
Okay.
I think there's never been a better market for candidates or for employees to go find somewhere else to make more money. They have a bargaining chip. Honestly, I think in some of the instances of ghosting that we've had, it's well, Laura, I hear that you have a job offer from Lumberman's. How much are they going to pay you? Because I'll pay you more than whatever they offered. And so we've had some people stolen away in that nature. But when we talk about retention and how do we keep people here, have we had people leave? Yes, we have. And there are some instances where they leave and maybe the grass wasn't greener on the other side. Right. And so we always tell people, just leave in good terms, because you never know. We're actually welcoming back an employee owner this week who had left for a period of time due to some family needs that took him away from West Michigan. But we've had lots of instances where people will leave and then end up coming back to the organization because they value the experience that they gained here. So yes, we've had some turnover, but I wouldn't say that we've had this mass exodus that we anticipated. When Amazon said they were coming to West Michigan, we all kind of clenched up and said, oh, we're in so much trouble. And then you see their billboards that say they're paying, $18 to $21 an hour and they have flexible schedules. But we haven't really experienced the downfall that we maybe expected. And I really do think that it's the intentionality with which we approach work and how we treat our people that we're getting the proof in the pudding there that people really value being seen and feeling like what they do matters and that somebody knows who they are.
And being heard, right? Being heard, understood. How do you get the feedback from your employees?
So our HR team does feedback meetings just to touch base, how you doing? Our benefits and payroll specialists will reach out to make sure they're, they've gotten all their enrollments done, all their paperwork is done, that if they have any questions about how to utilize their insurance. But then we also follow up and just check in on the tools that we utilize for communication. Have you downloaded them? Have you signed up? Do you know how to use them? We also have Henry Bauma, who is the son of the founder of Lumberman's.
Oh, cool.
He is our VP of Corporate Development, and he will go around and schedule meetings organically with new folks and just sit down and talk about what's your experience been like so far, and talk a little bit more about Lumberman's history and how the company got to where it is today, and just answer any questions they have and just listen to the feedback, which I think is really valuable. And then we're also in the process right now of finalizing an onboarding experience. So we have a group of leaders who is tasked, none of them work in HR, tasked with how do we create a more consistent and repeatable onboarding experience beyond orientation. Every job is different, but how do we make sure we have those intentional touch points, not only to gauge their progress, but also to ask for feedback. How are we doing and what could we do better? And so that process is slated to be presented later this month. So hopefully to roll out easily before the end of the year. So just trying to be very intentional on how do we dig deeper? How do we engage more? Even as we grow as an organization, we want to make sure it doesn't start to feel like this big sea of people and I'm lost in the shuffle.
No, and it sounds like that aspect is working, right? Because they're talking.
So.
It sounds like it sounds like a lot of times I hear, oh no, HR is going to but if HR is contacting you in this instance, if you're constantly having that communication to see how they're doing, they're not feeling like they're going to be in trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
I still get that. I'll call people and what did I do? And then I just will remind them, HR is not a bad thing. Sometimes HR does a lot of really happy things. And thankfully, I tell people that's the joy of my job is most of the time I'm not dealing with those difficult HR realities. But I think the more you intentionally try to connect with people, then if you do have to call them about something that might be deemed unpleasant, it's still not as bad because you've built that relationship, you've built that foundation. So, but some people come from the environment where HR is a swear word and they don't want to talk to you and they see your number and they don't answer. So then sometimes we have to follow up with a text like, hey, I just have a question. Okay.
You've been here for a month. I'm just trying to see how things are going. I think that's wonderful. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for your time and just sharing your secrets of how to keep people working and having an inclusive environment. We appreciate the work that you do with Michigan Rehab and our school. Everything that you do. Thank you so much.
Well, and we appreciate all the connections to resources that you've been able to provide for our employee owners. And a lot of times, we try to be this one-stop resource for people, but when it comes to very specific needs, we can't possibly have it all. So the partners that we have in the community and the way that we can collectively bounce off one another is so valuable. So thank you for the opportunity. And if you know anyone who needs a position, Lumbermans is hiring.
Thank you, Charlene, for sharing that interview and an insight on the inclusive workspace. My name is Dan Mitchell. I work for the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons in collaboration with Michigan Rehab Services. So some of the supports that we can provide or assistance is, number one, really looking at how to make your company more inclusive. Through one of the recommendations that we have is utilizing employee resource groups. They can have different focus, whether that's diversity and equity and inclusion, whether that's obtaining feedback, and usually it's in a more informal environment. That's a great starting place. We can also provide different individualized or general trainings through windmills, more disability etiquette, understanding how hiring this person could affect your culture in a positive way, or mitigating any concerns that you might have. Looking at how to different individualized trainings on how to help with addressing any mental health or mindfulness needs that your employees may have. Looking at a regional accommodation process, some of the return to work policies, and looking at how that fits in with the ADA. And then also another resource that we can assist with is getting connected with the talent acquisition portal, which is a federal program that helps different companies that are interested in hiring diverse talent, specifically individuals with disabilities. Next slide. Next slide. We also have various resources here in our resource page. This will be sent out with the transcript in the recording. So first and foremost, Michigan Rehab Services and Bureau Services for Blind Persons. These are our general websites. And then kind of just get down to the bottom, the LEO employer resource. That's a great single point of contact if you have a question, and then that will get vetted to one of us, depending on what the specific need is. The Job Accommodation Network is a federally mandated program that really helps with accommodation. They go through different scenarios dependent on disability and a lot of other factors that could help you as an employer to help either an employee or somebody all the way through the process from application to termination, and really looking at what point an accommodation needs to be put in place. And then the Employer Assistance and Resource Network, or EARN, is another federally determined site that really helps with looking at different scenarios and articles and resources to help employers in maintaining responsibilities within the ADA, but also looking at your bottom line and looking at how hiring individuals with disabilities can help you long term. And then finally, the Great Lakes ADA Center is a great resource. If you have questions, you can call or you can go on their website. Now, be mindful it is in Chicago, so we're going to be an hour off, but it's a great resource to make sure that you're doing your due diligence as an employer. Next slide. And that's it. Do we have any questions, comments, or concerns? I know that there was a couple questions that were in the chat, but I believe that they've already been addressed.
Yeah, Dan, this is Charlene. I do not see any questions that we didn't answer in the chat. We will be sending those resource links out to everybody, as well as this recording and the PowerPoint as well, just in case you wanted to review that. And yeah, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. I do want to personally thank Bethany and Katie, our interpreters, for joining us today. And hopefully you guys were able to get some good tips and some suggestions on, reasonable accommodations, those crucial conversations, just being open to having those, and some tips on bringing in talent. So yeah, I don't see anything else. So on behalf of Michigan Rehabilitation Services and the Bureau of Services for Blind Persons, we thank you so much for attending today. And we will get this information as soon as everything is recorded and put in a nice little bow. And we'll send this to you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.